Star Citizen is a pretty big lightning rod for rather intense discussion on the internet. But Squadron 42 is its quieter single-player cinematic counterpart that actually takes most of the attention behind the scenes. It's not a scam, it's not some secret conspiracy, but it is something most players don't realize, and something CIG has revealed multiple times in interviews and financial reports recently. While most players have been buying ships for Star Citizen, the number one priority for CIG is shipping Squadron 42. And despite the siphon of funds that is Squadron 42, it might be exactly what Star Citizen needs to succeed. This is my latest, more opinionated supporter exclusive video published in May to our Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube members. If you'd like access to this and more time to release videos every month, you'll get that, live podcast access, and more signing up on our Patreon below. If you already have though, thank you for supporting my Tomato Talks. When CIG pitched Star Citizen back in 2012, it sold both that and Squadron 42 as two halves of the same dream. You had the persistent universe, the PU, that was Star Citizen, and within this world would lie the single-player campaign, Squadron 42. Both were equal parts important, and both were equal parts the goal. But over time it became clear one game was gaining a higher priority internally. At least since the more cohesive stages of CIG's lifetime, starting around 2020, Squadron 42 has seen most of the developers focus. AI systems, travel mechanics, interfaces, narrative design, level design, you name it. If it didn't feel like it was moving forward in Star Citizen, the work was most likely going towards Squadron. This was relatively quiet earlier on. We wouldn't see much communication around Squadron 42 besides the occasional around the verse, but it would pop up every so often with a release date or a planned beta, just indicating their desire to at least make it seem like it was going to be released. Star Citizen, on the other hand, has never even suggested a release date outside of those first couple years. Honestly, that's the most annoying part. So much focus on Squadron 42, but the game has still taken so long to show itself. And this is part of what annoys some people. So much of that focus has been going towards Squadron 42, but the game has still taken so long to show itself. That being said, what we have been seeing lately has been looking pretty interesting. To best understand this prioritization of Squadron 42, you just need to go back to Richard Tyrer in September of 2021 calling all devs. During his interview with Jared, he explained the reasoning behind consolidating the actor feature team behind Squadron 42 development.
The core gameplay pillar, because it's not just actor feature teams, the core gameplay pillar, which actor feature team is probably the largest team on there, was Squadron prioritized, but PU focused. And now we are Squadron prioritized and Squadron focused, and we will be focusing on delivering those features to Squadron 42, proving them out, rounding them out, and then giving them to the content teams, which we would have done previously on the PU for them to implement those features into the PU unit, into the live release. Now, the significant difference here is the time frame by which that happens, and something I alluded to at the start, which is the tiering.
This idea of incubating features in Squadron 42 dev before moving them to Star Citizen was twofold. First, it would allow the team to work on features in a closed silo that would allow for faster iteration, clearer feedback, and a less cluttered workflow. The second part was more a hope that this would mean when Star Citizen players do see the feature, they're looking much better. This only proved half true, and even as they recommitted to this over the next couple of years, we only saw a handful of the actor features they said they'd be working on, and they weren't tip-top polish, but we'll get to that later. While this focus was meant to be more equally beneficial, I think it fell short. And judging by the work still going into Squadron 42, I think it all took much more work and time than they anticipated even then. We are seeing this same push towards getting more devs and more work behind Squadron 42 to get it released even now. It's been expanded to all teams, not just the actor features team. That is why Rich Tyrer has been brought from Squadron 42 over to also be running Star Citizen now, because his work on Squadron worked. I covered this in my feature looking at what happened last year in the company building Star Citizen, and how the responsibilities of this game shifted around over that time. This is all why Star Citizen is seeing minimal new features and a focus on content that can be made with existing technology and existing mechanics. And it's why it still feels like Star Citizen is getting developmental seconds strained for resources. I mean, look at this statement from the financial report for 2023. It was all too easy to divert resources earmarked for Squadron onto Star Citizen to tackle live issues raised by our customers and community stemming from our latest releases, but this was at the expense of the Squadron 42 development plan. So although an expensive commitment, the decision was taken to devote these planned and required resources to Squadron 42 in the interests of making solid progress towards our ultimate goals. It's all but confirmed. They have needed to scale back Star Citizen production more and more to service Squadron 42 with larger dev numbers that have called for more ships and sales and revenue from Star Citizen. A dangerous cycle, to be clear. But as they said, one that's ultimately making solid progress towards their ultimate goals, to ship Squadron 42. But there's reasoning behind this on the business side, from the player experience angle, and also as a necessity for Star Citizen's survival. Let's look at that. If you're sitting there wondering why your persistent server-meshed MMO dollars are going towards a single-player cinematic game from a business perspective, it's simple, and actually similar to the development question we asked earlier. Squadron 42 is an easier game to make. Yes, it has taken forever, but between getting the studios together, actually handling the scope of the game, building the game engine from CryEngine, and maintaining a persistent MMO environment, they've done okay. But none of this will last forever, and CIG has been very aware of this. Since around 2018, when they started a private investment agreement with the Calder family, most notably of billionaire Clive Calder, known for his ownership and founding of Jive Records, their investment continued throughout the years with another injection in 2020. While rumors point to this money being earmarked, at least in some part, for Squadron 42 and its marketing, I can't confirm that's 100% the case. Either way, the important detail here is that the repayments of those investments were timed to begin around 2024 originally. That's recently been renegotiated, but as much can be determined from the 2022 financial documents. But this points towards an expected return, presumably from Squadron 42, sometime between 2022 and 2025. Some of you may have noticed that CIG is finally starting to dip into the red a bit, with a presumed $20 million loss in 2023, right when they would have been seeing a big sales boost from Squadron 42. Now, this is all speculation with me trying to connect some dots, but the recent very heavy push to get Squadron 42 out also falls in line with this. With resources openly being stated as being directed back to Squadron 42, it seems time is up. While Star Citizen makes an absolute ton of money for Squadron to develop, it is an expensive game to develop and maintain on its own. In order for the game to succeed, two things need to happen. The company needs to improve their reputation and perception to the point that other players will give the game more than a laughing chuckle and a comment about a scam. They need to expand their player base at some point, and there are a lot of people out there looking for a cool space game. The other thing that needs to happen is CIG needs more money. Yes, I know they've made so much money so far, but it's not like they're sitting on that, they've spent it. And an MMO is a constant pit of expenditures. Something needs to help Star Citizen along until it can reach 1.0. The successful release of Squadron 42 could accomplish both of these things. Many will say everybody who would have bought Squadron 42 already has, but look through every single video released on that game since 2023 and clock how many folks have no clue what the game is but are interested. Those aren't all sales, but they are indicative of how unknown this game still is. Add on top of that the fact that Squadron 42 has never been heavily marketed, and it hasn't been available to buy since mid-2023, and you have millions of potential sales, in my opinion. Every day, new players are building their first PC, and as the years have grinded on, the ability for a game console to play Squadron 42 does grow closer and closer. As annoying as it might be to see all that development energy go into Squadron 42, the release of this game will be the first significant mark on the legacy of this project, and it'll define the reception and developmental capabilities of Star Citizen for years, and more importantly, leading up to an actual official release of Star Citizen 1.0. From star system additions to feature development, the constant updating of all ships in the game, the maintaining of the servers, it'll all cost money and devs. They've ballooned their group to over 1,000 employees, created a new studio space in Manchester, got themselves a motion capture stage, moved to a new building in Frankfurt, acquired a studio in Montreal, all while burning money on servers so we can server error in style. It's clear they were and still are expecting a big cash influx to help handle these expenditures, especially since all that happened in the last 5 years. It is very questionable whether this strategy was the best choice to go with, given the circumstances. But it's safe to say their situation is pretty unique, and while the strategy does sound good on paper, it's led to complications that only agitate the community and further delayed the supposed floodgates of Star Citizen. Let's talk about that. In 2021, Richard Tyrer claimed the additional work and polish going into actor feature-focused advancements would make their way to Star Citizen in an improved manner. The idea of Tier 0 was meant to go the wayside, strictly when it came to the actor feature team. While the inventory and medical gameplay saw immediate advancements right after that, and Tractor Beam saw improved functionality over the years, it wouldn't be until Alpha 3.23 in 2024 that we would finally see the fruits of this shift to Squadron 42. CIG also spent much of CitizenCon 2023 talking up these same advancements coming over from Squadron 42, explaining that the teams would move over to Star Citizen as well to start improving the experience, with Squadron 42 being feature complete. 3.23 rolled around, and for the 2+ years of waiting, players saw much improved but still incomplete versions of the star map, interaction system, mobiGlas, EVA system, the HUD, and new additions, the looting screen, and local maps. These were great additions that seriously pushed the game experience forward, but over time, the glitches, unpolished mechanics, and starkly incomplete designs would still make these feel lackluster after 2+ years of premonition and the hype cycle that was Q1 of 2024. And even at the time of writing in May of 2026, they all still have a ways to go. Since then, it has only become more clear that Squadron 42 has not opened the floodgates for Star Citizen's development. The PU is still progressing slowly in feature development. Much of that first half of 2025 was focused on stability, playability, and content. Server meshing finally helped this game reach a milestone that is letting it spread its legs a little bit and add more content that matters. But this also means CIG is kind of comfortable sitting here for a bit, and most feature development and in-depth work could remain on Squadron 42, while the narrative team and several other groups could utilize already existing features in the game like tractor beams, combat, mining, salvage, cargo hauling, and general locomotion to create new scenarios, events, mission givers, and sandbox activities that give players a lot more to do than they've ever had in Star Citizen. This has been a really good strategy, and coupled with ship releases every month, this approach kept players engaged, interested, and spending money. Because really, it just takes a good game to keep people spending money. All while avoiding requiring an outsized amount of development funds, as we saw mentioned again in the 2023 financials. Simultaneously, this allows the company to create a baseline of stability for Star Citizen that can remain as Squadron 42 releases. Thus, Squadron can then act as the Trojan horse funneling players into the MMO, which may not be 1.0 ready, but should be in a position to capitalize on the new waves of players. Now, at the time of writing, in May of 2025, this is going very well. The regen crisis is underway in 4.2, new content and locations continue on a monthly basis, and CIG just had their best May ever. But the floodgates haven't opened. Star Citizen is not currently the main beneficiary of CIG's current successful run, and while many elements will transfer over from Squadron 42 to Star Citizen, we've seen today that's not always straightforward. Now, we do see engineering and the new scanning features poised for the EPTU sometime soon, and they'll likely continue on finally to the live game from there. And things may be looking better by the time this game goes public in the fourth quarter of 2025. But it's safe to say, Star Citizen's development has been hampered by Squadron 42, but it will also likely be saved by it. Both of these projects live hand in hand from day one. Many are interested in one or the other, and neither is more important. But I think it's safe to say, at least right now, Squadron 42 is the golden child. Thanks for watching this video until the end. While it may come off as positive at some times and negative at others, which I know can be confusing, it's ultimately just an explanation of Squadron 42's relationship to Star Citizen. The story of how we got here is pretty complicated, but the reasoning behind it, why these games are shipping the way they are, at least in the last several years, is fairly simple. Use one game's funding model to fund both, then use the easier to ship game to pull the other up behind it. There are plenty of metaphors to explain this. It's a solid strategy on paper, and over the last year it's become more clear the strategy was not meant to go on this long. So the questions now are, can CIG hold out until Squadron 42 is truly good and ready to go? And will the game be good enough to keep the strategy going? Only time will tell, and many will drop off before then, but I'm interested in hearing how you feel about this strategy. Do you think it should have been different? I'd like to thank you again for watching till the end, and thanks to all supporters for making more in-depth, less news-focused videos like this possible. It seriously means a lot that you guys support us through this every month. If you're new to Squadron 42 or Star Citizen, consider subscribing here and over on Space Tomato 2 for more regular news and reviews every day. And if you want more videos like this every month, early, check us out on Patreon, where you'll get live podcast access every week, behind-the-scenes looks, and even the opportunity to join our referral code randomizer, getting yourself some extra money in-game, or an extra shipper vehicle every so often. I hope you learned something new in this video, and I'll catch you in the next.